Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 1, Chapter 10. Levin could not help noticing, as they entered the restaurant, how Stepan Arkadyevitch's face and the whole person seemed to shine with restrained happiness. Oblonsky took off his overcoat and, with his hat on one side, marched towards the dining room, giving, as he went, his orders to the Tartar, who, in swallow-tail and with his napkin under his arm, came to meet him. Bowing to right and left to his acquaintances, who, as usual, seemed delighted to see him, he went directly to the bar and took a small glass of vodka. The barmaid, a pretty French girl with curly hair, who was painted and covered with ribbons and lace, listened to his merry jest and burst into a peal of laughter. As for Levin, the sight of this French creature, all made up of false hair, rice powder, and vinaigre de toilette, as he said, took away his appetite. He turned away from her quickly, with disgust, as from some horrid place. His heart was filled with memories of Kitty, and his eyes shone triumph and happiness. "This way, your Excellency. Come this way, and you will not be disturbed," said the old obsequious Tartar, whose monstrous waist made the tails of his coat stick out behind. "Will you come this way, your Excellency?" said he to Levin, as a sign of respect for Stepan Arkadyevitch, whose guest he was. In a twinkling he had spread a fresh cloth on the round table, which, already covered, stood under the bronze chandelier. Then, bringing 2 velvet chairs, he stood waiting for Stepan Arkadyevitch's orders, holding in one hand his napkin and his order card in the other. "If your Excellency would like to have a private room, one will be at your service in a few moments." "Prince Galyuwitsin and the lady. We have just received fresh oysters." "Ah, oysters," Stepan Arkadyevitch reflected. "Supposing we change our plan, Levin," said he, with a finger on the bill of fare. His face showed serious hesitation. "But are they good? Pay attention. They are from Flensburg, your Excellency. They are none from Ostend. Flensburg oysters are well enough, but are they fresh? They came yesterday." "Very good. What do you say? To begin with oysters, and then to make a complete change in our menu? What say you?" "It makes no difference to me. I'd like the best of all some cabbage soup and wheat gruel, but you can't get them here." "Kash a la Russe, if you would like to order it," said the Tartar, bending over towards Levin as a nurse bends towards a child. "No, jesting aside, whatever you wish is good. I have been skating and am almost famished. Don't imagine," he added, as he saw an expression of disappointment on Oblonsky's face, "that I do not appreciate your menu. I can eat a good dinner with pleasure. It should be more than that. You should say that it is one of the pleasures of life," said Stepan Arkadyevitch. "In this case, little brother mine, give us 2, or, no, that's not enough, 3 dozen oysters, vegetable soup." "Printanière," suggested the Tartar. But Stepan Arkadyevitch did not allow him the pleasure of enumerating the dishes in French, and continued, "Vegetable soup, you understand. Then turbot, and a sauce not too thick. Then roast beef, but see to it that it be done to a turn. Yes, some capon, and lastly some preserve." The Tartar, remembering that Stepan Arkadyevitch did not like to call the dishes by their French names, waited till he had finished. Then he gave himself the pleasure of repeating the bill of fare according to the rule. "Potage printanière, turbot, sauce bon marché, poularade à l'estragon, macédoine de fruits." Then instantly, as though moved by a spring, he substituted for the bill of fare the wine list, which he presented to Stepan Arkadyevitch. "What shall we drink?" "Whatever you please, only let it be champagne," said Levin. "What? At the very beginning? But after all, why not? Do you like the white seal?" "Cachet blanc," repeated the Tartar. "Good with oysters, that will go well. Now, as we have settled on this brand for the oysters, bring that." "It shall be done, sir. And what vin de table shall I bring you?" "Some Nuit. No, hold on. Give us some classic Chablis. It shall be done, sir. And shall I give you some of your cheese? Yes, some Parmesan. Or do you prefer some other kind? No, it's all the same to me, replied Levin, who could not keep from smiling. The Tartar disappeared on the trot, with his coat-tails flying out behind him. 5 minutes later he came with a platter of oysters and a bottle. Stepan Arkadyevitch crumpled up his napkin, tucked it into his waistcoat, calmly stretched out his hands, and began to attack the oysters. Not bad at all, he said, as he lifted the succulent oysters from their shells with a silver fork and swallowed them one by one. Not at all bad, he repeated, looking from Levin to the Tartar, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Levin ate his oysters, although he would have preferred bread and cheese, but he could not help admiring Oblonsky. Even the Tartar, after uncorking the bottle and pouring the sparkling wine into delicate glass cups, looked at Stepan Arkadyevitch with a contented smile while he adjusted his white necktie. "You aren't very fond of oysters, are you?" asked Oblonsky, draining his glass. "Or are you preoccupied? Hey!" He was anxious to get Levin into good spirits, but the latter was anxious if he was not downcast. His heart being so full, he found himself out of his element in this restaurant, amid the confusion of guests coming and going, surrounded by the private rooms where men and women were dining together. Everything was repugnant to his feelings, the gas, the mirrors, even the Tartar. He feared that the sentiment that occupied his soul would be defiled. Yes, I am a little absent-minded, but besides, everything here confuses me. You can't imagine, he said, how strange all these surroundings seem to a countryman like myself. It's like the fingernails of that gentleman whom I met at your office. Yes, I noticed that poor Grinovitch's fingernails interested you greatly, said Stepan Arkadyevitch, laughing. I cannot, replied Levin. You are a puzzle to me. I cannot get you into the focus of a man accustomed to living in the country. The rest of us tried to have hands to work with. Therefore we cut off our fingernails, and oftentimes we even turned back our sleeves. Here, on the other hand, men let their nails grow as long as possible, and so as to be sure of not being able to do any work, they fasten their sleeves with plates for buttons. Stepan Arkadyevitch smiled gaily. That proves that there is no need of manual labor. It's brain work. Perhaps so, yet it seems strange to me, no less than this that we are doing here. In the country we make haste to get through our meals so as to be at work again, but here you and I are doing our best to eat as long as possible without getting satisfied, and so we are eating oysters. Well, there's something in that, replied Stepan Arkadyevitch, but isn't it the aim of civilization to translate everything into enjoyment? If that is the aim of civilization, I prefer to remain a barbarian. And you are a barbarian. Come now, you are all savages in your family. Levin sighed. He thought of his brother Nikolai, and felt mortified and saddened, and his face grew dark, but Oblonsky introduced a subject which had the immediate effect of diverting him. Very well, come this evening to our house. I mean, to the Shtcherbatskys', said he, winking gaily, and pushing away the oyster shells so as to make room for his cheese. Certainly, replied Levin, though it did not seem that the princess was very cordial in her invitation. What an idea! It was only her grande dame manner, replied Stepan Arkadyevitch. I shall come there immediately after the musicale at the Countess Bonina's. How can we help calling you a savage? How can you explain your flight from Moscow? The Shtcherbatskys have more than once besieged me with questions on your account, as if I were likely to know anything about it. I only know this, that you are always likely to do things that no one would expect you to do. Yes, replied Levin slowly and with emotion, you were right. I am a savage. But it was not my departure, but my return that proves me one. I've come now. Are you happy? Interrupted Oblonsky, looking into Levin's eyes. Why? I know fiery horses by their brand, and I know young people who are in love by their eyes, said Stepan Arkadyevitch dramatically. The future is yours. And yourself, have you a future before you also? I have only the present, and this present is not all roses. What's the matter? Nothing good, but I don't want to talk about myself, especially as I cannot explain the circumstances, replied Stepan Arkadyevitch. What did you come to Moscow for? Here, clear off the things, he cried to the Tartar. Can't you imagine? Answered Levin, not taking his eyes from his friend's face. I can imagine, but it is not for me to be the first to speak about it. By this detail you can tell whether I am right in my conjecture, said Stepan Arkadyevitch, looking at Levin with a cunning smile. Well, what have you to tell me? Asked Levin with a trembling voice and feeling the muscles of his face quiver. How do you look upon the affair? Stepan Arkadyevitch slowly drank his glass of Chablis while he looked steadily at Levin. I, said Stepan Arkadyevitch, I would say nothing but this one word. Nothing. But aren't you mistaken? Do you know what we are talking about? Murmured Levin, his gaze fixed feverishly upon his companion. Do you believe that what you say is possible? Why shouldn't it be? No, do you really think that it is possible? No, tell me what you really think. If she should refuse me, and I am almost certain that... Why should you be? Asked Stepan Arkadyevitch, smiling at his emotion. It's my intuition. It would be terrible for me, and for her. Oh, in any case, I can't see that it would be very terrible for her. A young girl is always flattered to be asked in marriage. Young girls in general, perhaps, but not she. Stepan Arkadyevitch smiled. He perfectly understood Levin's feelings and knew that for him all the young girls in the universe could be divided into two categories. In the one, all the young girls in existence, participating in all the faults common to humanity. In other words, ordinary girls. In the other, she alone, without the least imperfection, and placed above the rest of humanity. Hold on. Take a little sauce, said he, stopping Levin's hand, who was pushing away the sauce dish. Levin took the sauce in all humility, but he did not give Oblonsky time to eat. No, just wait, said he. I want you to understand me perfectly, for with me it is a question of life and death. I've never spoken to anyone else about it, and I cannot speak to anyone else but you. I know we are very different from one another, have different tastes and conflicting views, but I know also that you love me, that you understand me, and that's the reason I'm so fond of you. In the name of heaven, be sincere with me. I will tell you what I think, said Stepan Arkadyevitch, smiling. But I will tell you more. My wife, a most extraordinary woman, and Stepan Arkadyevitch stopped a moment to sigh as he remembered how his relations with his wife were strained. She has a gift of second sight and sees all that goes on in the hearts of others, but she is a prophetess when it comes to the question of marriage. Thus, she predicted that Brentelin would marry the Princess Shakovskaya. No one would believe it, and yet it came to pass. Well, my wife is on your side. What do you mean? I mean that she likes you, and she says that Kitty will be your wife. As he heard these words, Levin's face lighted up with a smile that was almost ready to melt into tears. She said that? He cried. I always thought that your wife was an angel, but enough of this sort of talk, he added, and rose from the table. Good, but sit a little while longer. But Levin could not sit down. He walked 2 or 3 times up and down the room, winking his eyes to hide the tears, and then came back to the table somewhat calmer. Understand me, he said, this is not love. I have been in love, but not like this. This is more than a sentiment. It's an inward power that controls me. I left Moscow because I made up my mind that such happiness could not exist, that such good fortune could not be on earth. But I struggled in vain against myself. I find that my whole life is here. This question must be decided. But why did you leave Moscow? Ach, stay, only think, only listen to me. If you only knew what your words meant to me, you cannot imagine how you have encouraged me. I am so happy that I am becoming selfish and forgetting everything, and yet this very day I heard that my brother Nikolai, you know him, is here, and I had entirely forgotten him. It seems to me that he too ought to be happy, but this is like a fit of madness. But one thing seems terrible to me. You, who are married, ought to know this sensation. It is terrible that we, who are already getting old, dare not approach a pure and innocent being. Isn't it terrible? And is it strange that I find that I am unworthy? No, you have not much to reproach yourself with. Ah, said Levin, and yet I look with disgust upon my life. I tremble and curse and mourn bitterly. Ah! And what can you do? The world is thus constituted, said Stepan Arkadyevitch. There's only one consolation, and that is in the prayer that I've always loved. Pardon me, not according to my deserts, but according to thy loving kindness. Thus only she can forgive me.